Have you ever wondered how an entire civilization was wiped off the map in what might be the most controversial military campaign in human history? The book of Joshua isn't just another Bible story about good versus evil. It's a brutal account of conquest, divine warfare, and moral questions that still make theologians uncomfortable today. What you're about to discover will challenge everything you thought you knew about this ancient text. The book of Joshua picks up exactly where Moses left off, but with a dramatic shift in tone. Moses was the liberator who led the Israelites out of slavery. Joshua? He's the conqueror who leads them into the promised land, sword in hand. This isn't a peaceful settlement story. This is total war, commanded by God Himself, against entire populations who had been living in Canaan for centuries. Picture this scene. Moses has just died after 40 years of wandering in the wilderness. The Israelites are camped on the eastern banks of the Jordan River, staring across at a land filled with fortified cities, advanced civilizations, and people who have no idea what's coming. God speaks directly to Joshua, Moses' chosen successor, with a command that would echo through millennia: "Be strong and courageous, for you will give this people the land I swore to their ancestors." But here's where it gets fascinating and disturbing at the same time. This isn't just about taking empty land. The Canaanites, Hittites, Hivites, Perizzites, Girgashites, Amorites, and Jebusites are thriving civilizations with their own cultures, religions, and families. Yet God's command is crystal clear: complete conquest and, in many cases, total annihilation. The first major obstacle isn't even human opposition. It's the Jordan River itself, swollen with spring floods and seemingly impossible to cross with over 1 million people. Joshua sends spies into Jericho, where they encounter Rahab, a prostitute who becomes one of the most intriguing characters in the entire narrative. She hides the spies and makes a deal that saves her family's life, but more importantly, she recognizes something the spies' own people sometimes forgot. The God of Israel is the true God of heaven and earth. When the Israelites finally cross the Jordan, something miraculous happens that parallels their ancestors' escape from Egypt. The river stops flowing, piling up in a heap upstream while the people walk across on dry ground. Joshua commands 12 men to take stones from the riverbed to build a memorial, ensuring future generations will ask about this moment and remember God's power. Now comes the siege that changed warfare forever: Jericho. Forget everything you learned in Sunday school about this being a simple story of faith and obedience. The archaeological implications alone are staggering. Here's a heavily fortified city with double walls, advanced defensive systems, and a population that has never experienced anything like what Joshua brings to their doorstep. The battle plan defies all military logic. March around the city once a day for 6 days in complete silence except for the sound of ram's horns. On the 7th day, march 7 times, blow the horns, shout with all your might, and watch the walls collapse. It sounds like fantasy, but consider this. Recent archaeological discoveries suggest Jericho may have been abandoned or destroyed around the right time period, though debates rage about whether this matches the biblical timeline. The aftermath of Jericho reveals the darker side of this conquest. Every living thing in the city is destroyed except Rahab and her family. This isn't selective warfare. This is what scholars call harem, complete devotion to destruction, where entire populations are wiped out as an offering to God. Modern readers struggle with this concept, but understanding it is crucial to grasping the book's theological framework. But victory breeds overconfidence. The next target, a small city called Ai, should have been easy after Jericho. Instead, the Israelites suffer a humiliating defeat because one man, Achan, violated God's command by keeping forbidden plunder from Jericho. His punishment reveals how seriously God takes obedience. Achan, his family, and all his possessions are stoned and burned. The message is unmistakable: partial obedience equals complete failure. The second attack on Ai introduces sophisticated military tactics. Joshua employs an ambush strategy, dividing his forces and using deception to draw the city's defenders away from their walls. It works perfectly, and Ai meets the same fate as Jericho. But here's what's fascinating. Joshua builds an altar and reads the entire law of Moses to the assembled people, including women, children, and foreigners. In the midst of brutal conquest, there's this moment of recommitment to justice and moral law. The Gibeonites present Joshua with his greatest diplomatic challenge. These clever Canaanites disguise themselves as travelers from a distant land, complete with moldy bread and worn-out clothes, and trick Joshua into making a peace treaty. When the deception is discovered, Joshua faces a dilemma: honor a treaty made under false pretenses or break his oath before God. He chooses to honor the agreement but makes the Gibeonites perpetual servants. This decision has massive consequences later when 5 Canaanite kings unite to punish Gibeon for making peace with Israel. The battle that follows features one of the most controversial miracles in the Bible. As Joshua pursues the fleeing kings, he prays for the sun and moon to stand still so daylight will last longer. The text claims the sun stopped in the middle of the sky for about a full day. Scientists, theologians, and historians have debated this event for centuries. Was it literal, metaphorical, a localized phenomenon? The text treats it as historical fact, calling it unique in all of human history. The southern campaign that follows reads like a military report. Makkedah, Libnah, Lachish, Eglon, Hebron, and Debir all fall in rapid succession. Each conquest follows a similar pattern: siege, victory, and complete destruction of the population. The repetitive nature of these accounts emphasizes the systematic nature of the conquest and God's consistent support for Israel's mission. The Northern Coalition poses the greatest military threat. Led by Jabin, king of Hazor, this alliance assembles forces described as numerous as sand on the seashore, with horses and chariots that would have struck terror into Bronze Age infantry. Yet Joshua's surprise attack at the waters of Merom results in another decisive victory. The burning of Hazor, described as the head of all these kingdoms, effectively ends organized resistance to Israelite conquest. But here's where the narrative takes an unexpected turn. Despite these dramatic victories, the conquest is incomplete. Large portions of the land remain unconquered, and many Canaanite populations survive in their cities. This partial success sets up conflicts that will plague Israel for centuries and raises theological questions about God's promises and human responsibility. The land distribution that occupies the book's second half reveals careful organization and divine guidance. Each tribe receives territory determined by casting lots, a method that removes human favoritism and places the decision in God's hands. The detailed boundary descriptions might seem boring, but they represent something revolutionary: a systematic approach to governance that balances tribal autonomy with national unity. Joshua's final speeches mirror Moses' farewell addresses but with harder-won wisdom. He's seen what happens when people drift away from God's commands. His warnings about serving foreign gods aren't theoretical, they're based on observing human nature during decades of leadership. The covenant renewal at Shechem becomes a marriage ceremony between God and his people, with Joshua demanding they choose their allegiance publicly and permanently. The book's conclusion reveals its true purpose. This isn't just military history or religious propaganda. It's a testament to God's faithfulness and a warning about the consequences of unfaithfulness. Joshua's death marks the end of an era when divine guidance was immediate and miraculous. Future generations would need to rely on the law, the priesthood, and their own commitment to God's covenant. Understanding Joshua requires wrestling with its moral complexity while recognizing its historical significance. Whether you view it as literal history, theological interpretation, or something in between, the book of Joshua shaped concepts of divine justice, national identity, and moral warfare that continue influencing world events today.